The story of Joaquin Phoenix begins far from the capital of world cinema and long before his birth. Let's talk about his parents first. Arlyn Phoenix grew up in a typical Jewish family from the Bronx. Her ancestors had immigrated from Hungary and did everything they could to ensure that a more prosperous, albeit tedious, life awaited their children. No sooner had Arlyn graduated from high school than she was married off to a wealthy partner and given a job as a secretary in a local office, which only differed from the hundreds of others by the interior of its lobby. Well, it only took a couple of months for that interior to get boring, as did the monotony of everyday life as an exemplary wife. The spirit of defiance smoldered in the young woman's heart, and the freedom of the 60s was a wind fanning the flame. And then one day, perhaps on an unremarkable Tuesday, Thursday, or even Saturday, she left home forever. The streets were teeming with thousands of hippies, and Arlyn was easily lost in the crowd. Behind her were the evening parties, a 9-to-5 job, and her husband. And ahead was the road to California, a place that was eager to adopt a newborn flower child. The young woman hitchhiked her way across half of the United States before meeting her first love. When John Bottom stopped to pick Arlyn up on the side of the road, he had no idea that it was his future wife climbing into his pickup truck. Like his passenger, John was running from the horrors of the past. His life as an orphan, a failed marriage, and the military draft. Together, they hid from their memories along the Pacific coast. Life was full of beaches, sun, marijuana, LSD, and nomadic hippie communes. John and Arlyn got married in one of these communes. 2 years later, on the floor of a small shack where dozens of other community members were huddled, their first child, River, was born. The Bottoms were traveling all over America at that time. They worked on farms in California, roamed around New Mexico, and met a charming bunch of missionaries in Texas. These young people didn't use drugs at all and encouraged the Bottoms to join their new religious group.
The system's nothing, it's just not worth living for. There's love here, there's nothing out there. So let's get it together and show them.
Arlyn and John found inner freedom and peace in the teachings of David Berg, who in a couple of years would start calling himself Moses David. In early 1973, they joined the Children of God in a gated ranch commune called the Texas Soul Clinic. Rain came into the world as the newest member at the Bottom family. She was named after the rainy day on which she was born. Young River was attending what was the equivalent of Sunday school, where teachers talked about the final judgment, the burning of sinners, and the Antichrist, who would torment little American children who disobeyed Moses David. During this period, the child's parents had been steadily moving up the hierarchical ladder of the community, and in 1974, John was promoted to be Archbishop of Venezuela. The title was grandiose, but in reality, it meant that the family would have to move to South America at their own expense and spread the teachings of the Children of God there in search of more followers and money. Although the move was difficult, the Bottoms were lucky. They left the commune before Berg became a violent cult leader. Over the next 20 years, his followers would be convicted of both physical and sexual abuse towards women and children. And Moses David and his inner circle would be sentenced to life in prison. However, this doesn't stop the Children of God from continuing to preach and recruit new members into their ranks. But back to the Bottoms. On the way to Venezuela, they stopped in Puerto Rico, where Joaquin Raphael was born on October 28, 1974.
A few weeks later, she takes me to the doctor. He sees me and says, "Who did this hair lip operation? That's the best operation I've ever seen." Mom said, "No one. He wasn't born with a hair lip. I was just born with a scar."
The birth of Joaquin anchored the family to the poor streets of San Juan. Poverty existed side by side with the stunning beaches and lush nature, where the child spent his days watching his father. John Bottom eked out a living as a gardener by taking care of the lawns of wealthy estates or cleaning their pools. Upon finally reaching Caracas, the family grew once again. A second daughter was born and was given the name Liberty Butterfly. John, Arlyn, River, Rain, Joaquin, and Liberty all lived together in a rundown shack with no water or amenities. According to the precepts of the Children of God, who used children to collect alms, every weekend the young Bottoms would play in La Candelaria Square. The eldest son had learned a couple of chords from local musician Alfonso Sainz. who gave the boy his first guitar. The fair-haired niños quickly became famous among the locals. The trip to another continent dragged on, and the cult's new doctrines became more frightening and repulsive. Rumors about David Berg's sexual perversion and financial fraud often reached his followers. Police had been searching for him for the past 7 years, and the Bottoms were beginning to believe that the charges against him were justified. In 1978, Arlyn and John finally left the Children of God.
The whole family showed up at my doorstep one day at the church saying that they'd kind of gone into a faith crisis, that they weren't comfortable in the Children of God anymore, and they wanted to leave.
A missionary priest they knew put them on a fishing boat bound for Florida. The captain provided the Bottoms with a tiny cabin on board, and in return, River and Rain would perform for the crew every night. Joaquin remembered the good-natured sailors, the ocean breeze and tropical islands, but seeing the sailors hard at work just once was all it took for the boy to cross off a life at sea from his list of aspirations. One day, he ran out onto the deck as the fishermen were hauling in their catch in nets. Joaquin looked on in horror as the suffocating prey were killed by the men with measured blows against the wall.
It was our first concrete experience seeing what happened to food before it gets on the table. And we decided never again to eat anything that had once breathed.
At the end of the year, the ship docked off the coast of Florida and the Bottoms set foot on their native land as vegetarians. Finally, back in the US, the family went to visit Arlyn's parents, who met their grandchildren and son-in-law for the first time. Joseph and Marjorie Dunnets had retired and moved to a quiet seaside town, and there they housed the Bottom family, which gained another member. On December 10, 1978, Summer Joy Phoenix was born. After a couple of months, John got a job as a gardener in the house of Alfonso Saints, the same musician who had given River his guitar. He settled the Bottoms in the steward's house next to his estate. For the ever-roaming family, a couple of bedrooms, a bathroom, and a kitchen felt like a palace. The children went to an ordinary school and for the first time in their free time, helped their father take care of the plants. But alas, the fairy tale didn't last long. John injured his back and lost his job, once again causing the Bottoms to turn to their gifted children. That following year, River, Rain, Joaquin, and Liberty won every single talent show in the state of Florida. The quartet's charm was put on the assembly line, and soon the Phoenix's ambition began to outgrow the southern estate. It was during this time that they changed their surname. Just as they had done 10 years before, they were leaving their past behind. The wandering cults and poverty went up in flames, and from the ashes, a bright and happy future emerged. Arlyn collected newspaper clippings about the children and sent them to a former classmate, actress Penny Marshall. The portfolio impressed several Paramount employees who invited the family to Los Angeles to meet and talk more, while also emphasizing that a simple sit-down would hardly be worth the long trip. The Phoenixes ignored the latter sentiment, sold all of their belongings, loaded the children into a broken-down Volkswagen van, and set off on a 3,000-mile journey.
We had the vision that our kids could captivate the world.
Alas, the meeting in Los Angeles was underwhelming. The Dream Factory gave the Phoenixes the typical "we'll call you back," a phrase which only the staunchest of optimists could find promising. The Bottoms had run out of money on their way to LA, and knocking on studios' doors wasn't going to fill the bellies of their 5 children. But Arlyn still believed. She tapped into the skills of her youth and got a job at NBC as a casting secretary for producer Joel Thurm. Miss Phoenix had a plan: infiltrate the Hollywood machine, network with the right people, and set her children up for success. Perhaps too simple of a plan, but it worked. After a series of meaningful handshakes, Arlyn found herself at the door of Iris Burton's office. The legendary Iris Burton, as she called herself, year after year made the list of the most influential people in the film industry. Every talented child who has appeared in commercials or on TV since the early 1980s has worked with Burton. Over a 30-year career, she introduced the world to Fred Savage, Kirsten Dunst, the Olsen sisters, and Josh Hartnett. Iris liked the Phoenix clan too. Arlyn was equally as pleased at their meeting. Up until that point, Rare negotiations with agents had only ever hinted at the prospect of giving River a shot, but Iris promised to give each child the opportunity to work in Hollywood. She wasn't even bothered by the family's vegetarianism and refusal to participate in advertising meat products, which ruled out about 80% of potential contracts for her new clients. The family signed a deal with Iris, but after a full year of working together, she had only managed to set up a couple of auditions. The Phoenixes received their first performing fees at grand openings of shopping centers and city holidays.
Gonna make it, gonna make it, gonna make it.
In one of his rare auditions, River took a chance and landed the leading role in a TV series called 7 Brides for 7 Brothers.
Hey, thanks. Then I don't have to worry.
The musical drama told the story of a restless family living in the wilderness with no parents. This remake of a classical musical was broadcast on CBS for just 2 years, but 24 episodes was enough to reveal the potential of the eldest Phoenix. 1 week after airing the pilot episode, the studio's mailbox became inundated with fan mail. All letters for River. His parents forced him to personally respond to each fan.
What do you mean?
River's success opened the doors for younger members of the family. While shooting the show's Christmas episode, the casting director needed 2 children, and instead of setting up a casting call, Joaquin and Liberty, who had been on the set every day of filming, were invited to appear on screen.
What are you guys doing?
In the end credits, Joaquin was credited as Leaf Phoenix. The boy didn't like that he was the only one of his brothers and sisters to have a so-called boring name, so he came up with a nickname of his own, one that would stick with him for the next 15 years. His TV appearance helped Leaf land a couple of small roles before teaming up with his brother again.
How about if I tell you a story?
They starred together in an ABC educational special about dyslexia.
Okay, read that fine. Danger. No admittance.
Later, roles in The Fall Guy, Hill Street Blues, and Anything for Love helped Leaf adopt to the acting profession and win auditions more often. He shared screen time with his sister, Summer, on the set of Murder, She Wrote. They played the niece and nephew of Jessica Fletcher, who investigates a crime in the middle of an amusement park.
Oh, boy.
When the episode aired, the whole family laughed at how Leaf's character asks for his favorite burger.
Gee, Aunt Jess, I sure hate to see that other hamburger go to waste.
I'll just bet you would.
Of course, the burger was just a prop. The boy was not forced to eat meat.
What happened?
Nothing, dear. They were just playing a big joke.
1986 was a landmark year for the Phoenix family. River was on the covers of magazines thanks to the success of Stay By Me and The Mosquito Coast. Rain changed her name to Rainbow and made her TV debut, while Leaf landed his first role in a real movie. Space Camp tells a story about a group of boys who attended NASA's summer space camp and accidentally launched themselves into orbit. Director Harry Weiner approached Iris Burton about finding a child who could make audiences believe that he was obsessed with Star Wars.
May the Force be with you.
During filming, Phoenix was taken under the wing of his older co-star and easily took on any tasks he was given on screen. The only exception was the zero-gravity scene, in which Leaf was suspended 40 feet in the air on a cable.
He was terrified, and so the money counters are counting money. The production manager is counting time, and I'm just trying to talk to this sweet boy to try to convince him and give him the courage to fly 40 feet in the air and have some fun with it, to see the wonders of space for the first time, you know. But every time I spoke to him, he would just break down in abject tears. It just so happened that River turned up on the set that day, and so it was this very moment that River came over. River stands up. He's done having a little chat with his brother. Leaf looks over at me with some sense of determination. I say, "Are you ready?" He nods, and boom! He's lifted 40 feet off the stage floor and gives us the shot we need and want, and delivers it beautifully without another tear shed.
No way!
Space Camp turned out to be a sweet, touching, and slightly silly movie, a winning combination for a family hit.
All right!
However, the film met a crushing defeat at the box office. The film hit the big screen just 5 months after the Challenger shuttle disaster. As film critic Roger Ebert said, it wasn't the right time for a comedy thriller about a group of kids who accidentally go into orbit with a teacher. It was no longer appropriate. The following year, Leaf landed another lead role.
Drop your weapon, Americanists.
Russians! They landed on the beach!
It was a peace-loving tale of three teenagers who befriend a Soviet sailor during the Cold War. The film poked fun of the prejudice and paranoia that had gripped American society.
Is American imperialism threatens world peace?
Wrong, Ivan. It's a relentless Soviet obsession for world domination.
Critics were impressed with the film and the caliber of its child actors.
That's great. That's cool. That's my favorite one.
That's the best right there.
The media predicted a bright career ahead of Leaf, just like his older brother, comparing his recent success with that of Stand By Me. During this time, River had already starred in a string of teen films, and also landed the role of young Indiana Jones in the third installment of Steven Spielberg's adventure saga. The Phoenixes gradually became all the rage in Hollywood, but that didn't sit well with the head of the family. John believed that filming had a negative effect on children, so towards the end of 1987, he moved the family away from Los Angeles. He purchased a modest estate in Florida, where everyone except for River moved. Now, Leaf had to travel across the country to audition for something. It didn't happen often. Over the course of 2 years, he only features in a couple of TV series and a TV movie called Secret Witness. But in 1989, Leaf wins the hearts of film critics once again. As soon as he enters the frame, it's obvious how the young man's dramatic talent is rapidly developing. Phoenix reveals new facets of his craft in his performance with Diane Wiest.
Kind of.
The scene of the phone conversation is carried by his ability to harness true emotion, welling up tears as he does so.
Okay.
It's clear that Leaf felt much more at home portraying a troubled teen than an innocent cutie. His co-stars also helped him. Aside from Wiest, the film features newcomers like Keanu Reeves and Martha Plimpton, who had been dating River for a couple of years. Comedy masters Steve Martin and Rick Moranis also star in the film. Parenthood was another notch on director Ron Howard's belt, earning over $100 million at the box office. The film's success and frequent mentions in the press instilled faith in Phoenix and marked the beginning of a meteoric rise in his career.
Looking hot. Looking damn hot.
The young man never expected that playing the role of Gary would typecast him. Leaf returned to Florida, hoping that scripts for major projects would start rolling in. But all he got were more mediocre screenplays about troubled teens. After a year of Phoenix tossing them straight into the trash, he stopped receiving them altogether. During this time, John and Arlyn had begun to drift apart. The father moved to Costa Rica, where River had recently bought some property. Leaf went with John, but after a couple of months, he returned to Los Angeles. During his forays into the capital of world cinema, he attacked auditions. Phoenix's agent later recalled how the young actor was passed over for Scent of a Woman and lost to Leo DiCaprio on auditions for This Boy's Life. Then, he and his older brother lost the leading roles for What's Eating Gilbert Grape to Leonardo and Johnny Depp. River was also having a streak of bad luck. After My Own Private Idaho, the most popular of the Phoenixes changed. His next film would capture a shadow of his formerly energetic personality. Producers bombarded Iris Burton with complaints about the actor. He was burning through takes and had seemingly forgotten how to talk. Box office performances of the melodrama The Thing Called Love brought with it scathing critiques of River.
Well, that's a fine point to make. Thank you.
His career was plummeting, but his agent saw the role of a journalist in Interview with a Vampire as a lifeboat. A film with Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt would tell Hollywood that Phoenix was fine and ready to reach new heights in his career. But then he went to a nightclub called the Viper Room, which became a tragic testament to the dangers of drugs. On October 30th, 1993, Leaf and Rain came to visit their brother.
The night he died, we were together and he was just playing the guitar. He wanted to show me a new song, wanted to just go home and hang out, play the guitar. I was the one who wanted to go out, and he just came because he was making sure I was taken care of.
No one knows for sure what happened at the club that night. First responders found the actor unconscious at the main entrance. River died of an overdose at the hospital. Hey, do you like our work? Let us know with your like and comment. Push that subscribe button and share with your friends. If you want to support the project financially, become our sponsor on Patreon or YouTube sponsorship. Thank you.